I'm Iris Muller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and a proud mom of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
And I'm Alma Schneider, a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mom of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising kids with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new. This is Two Moms, No Fluff.
Hello, everybody. We are Two Moms, No Fluff. Alma Schneider here with me, and I'm Iris Muller. And today, I want to welcome all our new listeners and everybody that has been here before. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have a very special topic, which is cooking. And for everybody who's like me, who has some aversion to the subject, I brought a special guest who can talk to us about cooking and everything that is holding us back from conquering our very own kitchens. Hello, Alma, my guest. How are you?
Hello. Oh, I'm the guest. Oh,
Yes, you are.
okay. I'm the guest. Yes, Iris asked me to be her guest today on Two Moms No Fluff. And for those of you who are new, I am Iris's partner in Two Moms No Fluff. So I'm here every time you see Iris, you do see me. So yes, I do have
But today I prepared the red carpet for you because you're a guest.
You did prepare the red carpet, and I'm very honored and flattered to be your interviewee. But yes, I do wear many hats, and one of my hats is that I founded a consulting company and blog called Take Back the Kitchen. So about 15 years ago, I started realizing that a lot of people had psychological as well as practical obstacles to cooking. And I discovered this just by being my normal self, cooking for my friends, and realizing that a lot of them really couldn't find the time, or they just weren't able to put meals on the table, especially having children, that it was really complicated for them. And I would try to teach some people how to cook because I thought it was odd that they weren't able to do a quick recipe. And some people were able to cook once I taught them some basic, cooking strategies. But there were some who just couldn't seem to get a handle on it, even though they were really smart, accomplished people. So in a nutshell, Take Back the Kitchen was born because as a social worker, I cannot bear not being able to help people with their obstacles. It's something I must do. So I combined my love of cooking with my counseling background. And so that's kind of how the whole thing started. But I'm happy to say that I kind of discovered that there were different cooking personality types, and figuring that out kind of helped people not feel so alone or isolated. See a common theme here with how we function here with Two Moms No Fluff. That because if you can't cook, there are reasons why. And those issues need to be identified first and then addressed, much like any other obstacle that we have in our life, whether it's driving or learning how to swim or, skydiving, anything else that we want to accomplish. We have to first figure out why we have a fear or an insecurity, or just, figuring out why this isn't working, why this isn't resonating for me, why I can't take this information in, the simple education. Why can I not take that information and then transfer it to be able to accomplish certain tasks? So everybody has a different reason when they come to the table, no pun intended, why they struggle with cooking. So I help people identify what those issues are, and then we start the practical task of learning how to cook.
And Alma, I know that you have, gone through many workshops in which you taught different segments of the population how to cook and how to conquer the kitchen, as you say, take back the kitchen. And I wanted to ask you a bit about the concept that you kind of came up with, and that's the cooking personalities. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about that?
So after doing a lot of workshops and individual sessions, I started to see that people fell into categories that that were unique to their issues, but also overlapped with some of the other cooking personalities. So one of the so there are four cooking personalities that I've identified. They are the distracted cook, and that goes along with a lot of ADD. People seem to have some ADD like tendencies. They get distracted easily. There is the carefree cook, and that's kind of a euphemism for people who don't really like to follow the rules or listen to authority, and they kind of go out on their own. They'll read a recipe and say, "Oh, I'll substitute this with that," and see how it comes out. Yet they don't have any cooking background at all, no foundation, so they kind of mess up recipes and then wonder why nobody wants to eat their food. So I help them kind of figure out those kinds of
That's me.
strategies. I don't believe that because I've eaten your food. It's very good. So we have the distracted personality who gets very flustered if anything is going on when they're not able to focus and they can't concentrate on a recipe. We have the carefree cook. We have the oh my gosh, I'm like spacing out here now that I'm being interviewed.
Just a second, but the carefree personality is
The carefree cooking personality,
Mhm.
that's the one that kind of does their own thing. They
That's
don't.
me.
Oh, that's the one that you are. Okay.
I think so. I am the type who gets a recipe and I'm like, the general idea seems good, but let me change it a bit. And I can't just follow a recipe. When I'm in the kitchen, I just cannot follow the rules. In general, it's hard for
But
me.
but a lot of the cooking personality types are consistent with how we are in other areas of our life, which is interesting. However, sometimes you have the opposite. Sometimes people are real rule followers in all aspects of their life. For some reason, they see cooking as something like, oh, I can just do whatever I want. And it doesn't fly. You need to have a basic foundation in cooking in order to be able to get creative. So that's the carefree creative cook is the one who it's great to be that, but you need to have basic understanding of cooking in order to get creative, just like artists need to have some kind of background in color and the different kind of canvases, different things that, I mean, I'm assuming because I'm not an artist, but you need to have knowledge of a little knowledge at least of how to use the paints and how to use different colors in order to create what you want to create. So a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't, and this is where it gets a little psychological. Well, I'm a woman and women cook. So and women are born with a spatula in their hands, so they should know how to cook. And I'm just going to be put it together like I'm supposed to. But cooking is not something that you're born with. Knowing how to cook and being a proficient cook, you really need to practice cooking or like anything else. You need to have practice in order to get that foundation to be able to then launch off of that to be a creative cook.
So what does make kind of I guess, a basic ability cook? Like what does one need to really know to be independent in the kitchen?
Okay. Mm, Good question. A lot of things. The
Mhm.
very first thing that I have my clients work on is in finding an incentive. Okay. Because nobody's going to stick with something if there's no reason for them to stick with it. So when I say incentive, I ask people to come up with the reason why they want to learn how to cook. Okay, so let's use you as an example if you're willing to
Of course.
disclose. What do you have any reason to learn how to cook?
Yes, so my family eats healthier food.
Okay, so that's a perfect example. Somebody might have a child that has health issues, and because we are a Two Moms No Fluff podcast talking about disability, a lot of people know most of us know that good nutrition is really important for everything, for your immune system, for gut health, for autism. They've realized, through research that that can really have an impact on behavior. So you might have a child with a lot of medical issues or behavioral issues, and you really want to try to become proficient in the kitchen so that you can create foods without stress. Okay. It's really important to come up with your own incentive. Why do I want to do this? And for some people, I ask them to write it out, and put it on the fridge on a magnet, every time you're going to go into the fridge. Because a lot of people get frustrated. They throw their hands up in the air when a recipe doesn't come out okay. And they're like, why am I even bothering doing this? I just wasted ingredients. I just spent time shopping. I spent money and it came out lousy. And then they throw their hands up in the air and they say, forget it. If we have an incentive, like we can keep our eyes on the prize and think, I'm going to get through this and I'm going to learn how to do this because my end goal is to keep everybody healthy. So making those connections can really help somebody, get through the arduous task of, failed recipes. And I like how you always say glorious fails. You use the term glorious fails because if we share that with other people and know that we're not alone, we can laugh about it. We can, and we can know that it takes a lot of failures to get to the place where you want to be. I mean, I cannot tell you how many amazing recipes I have created by making a mistake, by adding more sugar, by adding, less salt, by adding lemon juice instead of water, and like, oh my God, or water instead of lemon juice. Like it making mistakes can lead you to a better place. So it's kind of shifting gears and knowing that there's no such thing as like a waste of time or energy or money when you're talking about cooking, because we all need the practice and we need to know what's going to work and what's not going to work.
Oh my gosh, saying the term waste reminds me of one of my husband and my favorite arguments.
What is it?
That is when one of us is cooking. First of all, we argue about using a recipe in the first place. Mm-hmm. My husband always follows a recipe, and I cannot stand looking at a piece of paper or like on my phone when I'm cooking. So when he cooks, if the recipe calls for like half a carrot, he would use a half a carrot. And I would like run after him with a half a carrot in my hand. Like, what are we supposed to do with this other half of the carrot? Just put it in your recipe so we can like use the whole carrot. Why are you just wasting? This would like sit here in the refrigerator, slowly die, and it would end in the trash.
Why wouldn't you just eat the carrot?
I don't
half
know.
A carrot.
I gave a carrot as an example. Obviously,
Okay.
carrot is an easy item to resolve.
Yes.
But with other things, I'm just like,
Yes.
There's 2 more teaspoons of mayonnaise here. Can't you just clear the jar?
Yeah, well, that could screw up the recipe for him. And, but that's an excellent point, because that has nothing to do with cooking. What you just described has nothing to do with cooking. However, all of these things in our world have an impact on our desire and ability to cook. So for someone like you might, if I were teaching you how to cook, I would say, if you have that need to use up things and not have them get wasted or sit around in the fridge, I would say, whatever you're making, whatever the leftover ingredients are, we're in the age of, Google. You can literally Google and say recipes that call for half a cup of vegetable broth, that wasn't used for that. There are all sorts of ways to use up those. If that's something that was really keeping you from cooking, which through discussion, that's what I do with my clients. We figure out, like, where is it? It's because what you're talking about has nothing to do with cooking. It has to do with waste. But if that issue is keeping you from going forward with cooking, it's something that needs to be addressed so that you feel more comfortable cooking. So I would say, use that, find another place to put that carrot, find another place to put, the broth, because that's one of my pet peeves, having broth sitting there because no recipe calls for that, and then it's sitting in the fridge, it's going to go to waste. So for me, because I've been cooking for so long and I love the challenge of, okay, what am I going to do with that leftover thing? I find something immediately, because my connections are much quicker because I have so much practice cooking. But this is what I teach people. Look at those leftover ingredients and make something else with them. Have a plan for whatever's left over. Even before you make the recipe, you could say, all right, I have a whole quart of vegetable broth. That's okay. I have a whole quart of vegetable broth that I had to buy for this. I'm going to use 1 cup for this recipe that it calls for. What is my plan for the rest of it? So for me, off the top of my head, I would say make another soup. Plan to make another soup with it. Drink it. You can drink hot vegetable broth. You can add it to the lasagna sauce that the meat sauce that you're making for the lasagna. You can add that in there. So there's always a place for it to go.
Yeah, obviously, I come from a Jewish family. We don't throw out food. It's an
Neither do
obsession.
I. Neither do I. But I've gotten to the place where I use it, and I always end up wasting a little, something. You can never do 100%, but there's composting for stuff like that. If it's vegetables, you can. So they're not. You're not. You can look at it as like not fully wasting because you're composting if it's vegetables and produce. Another thing I just want to mention is storing of food. Talking about waste is something that I teach all the time because that's a really big issue for people. They feel guilty purchasing these things and then it goes to waste. And there's a way to store food for longevity to get the most time out of your vegetables. And one example would be for very fragile produce like basil, cilantro, spinach leaves. You want to use that stuff quickly. Whereas if you buy kale, where it's really sturdy, or collard greens, you can put those a little further back in the fridge out of view and know that you have, at least like a week to use those. But if you're going to buy spinach, you better use that, tonight or tomorrow night in a salad. So it's really, what I always say is moving the inventory. I'm always moving the inventory. It's like I have a restaurant, and that's what I teach people. Like, this is what restaurants do. They use up what they have quickly and save the stuff that will last longer, and there's a way to store it that will make it last longer as well. Water is, oxygen is the enemy. You want to keep air out of things because moisture will make things go bad quicker. So, for example, wrapping basil or cilantro in a napkin or paper towel and then putting it in a Ziploc bag in the fridge, that will make it last longer. So all these little tricks and tips that I share with people that really can change how you view cooking, because for a lot of people, they don't want to waste food.
So for, I think, our audience, like you and I, the main problem that people have, and we all have the good intention of feeding our kids, especially, and the rest of the family, healthy food,
Yes.
but we really don't have the time. Really don't have the time. How do you resolve this? How do you help moms like me that struggle anyway to survive their day with approaching the kitchen?
Okay. It's not just people who have kids with disabilities these days who really struggle with this. And I want to point that out because we are living in an age where nobody feels like they have time to cook because everything is like so quick and we have such instant gratification. We can order things on Instacart and have it at our house in an hour. We can order from a restaurant. We can buy prepared food from a supermarket. We are living in an age, I don't know if people are aware of this, where a child can grow up in their entire life having never eaten a home cooked meal. Can you imagine? Never having the experience of their grandmother or their father or their mother making them a dish. And don't we all have our favorite dish that a family member made or a friend made? Remember when you made me that delicious blah, blah, blah? Kids can actually grow up never having eaten a home cooked meal because everything is so easy. The problem with that is that it costs more money. It's usually not as healthy if you're ordering in. And there's something I feel very nice about, cooking. And you can share recipes with your children and your family members. And it's a form of love to cook and create for your family. So I do want to say that we're not alone in the busyness, but having a child with a disability might make it harder because we were more taxed in some ways. Not always, but in some ways, yes. So the antidote for that, what I teach, because that's really the number one thing that people come to me with. They're like, I don't have any time to cook. Like, I don't know how people cook. I have no time. I work out of the house. I have a child with a disability. I really don't have any time to cook. Um, what I do with people, with everyone I work with, is I talk about creating a custom menu for your family. Whether you live alone, whether it's for your whole family, whether it's for, friends who live together, creating a menu provides so many benefits to the family. Okay, and I'll just name a few. One, we all have that stress and that guilt of 5 o'clock coming around and the kids saying, "What's for dinner?" And we're like, I don't know. It's really important for adults and kids alike, and especially children with disabilities, to have structure and to know what's coming next, because there can be a lot of anxiety, depending on the disability, of course. Eating food is primal. Like, we need to eat. And we might not realize it, but, especially for younger children, they need to know that they're going to have a meal, like, and what that's going to be. So structure is so important for all kids, and especially with food, because it is primal. So you're having a menu, and I'm not talking about a menu that changes every week. I'm talking about a menu that pretty much stays the same for a while, and then once the cook gets comfortable with that menu, they can start making creative changes. Just like I mentioned before, you have to have a foundation before you can get creative. You need to get very comfortable with a set menu of foods that everybody likes, that everybody likes, and then you can start taking some risks. So, for example, what I recommend is that people get together with their family members. Everybody decides on the menu together, because if a child is part of the process, or even an adult, they are going to be more likely to own it and to eat what you're actually cooking. So you won't be wasting your time if you make something and nobody likes it. You're going to make things, even if at the start they're things that you're buying, at least you have a plan, because having a plan is number one. So it reduces stress because you know what you're going to have for dinner. The kids are less anxious because they know what's coming for dinner and they know that it's going to be something that they like. And number three, you every time you order food from the supermarket, you don't end up with a bunch of snacks that are not for dinner. You have a plan that, oh, because we all decided on breakfast for dinner night, Monday night, I know that every time I go shopping and every time I look in my fridge, I have to make sure that because we do breakfast for dinner night once a week, I always have eggs in the fridge. I always have whole wheat toast, because that's the only kind of toast my kids will eat with no grains in it. And I always have broccoli, because that's the only vegetable my kids will eat. So that is Monday night, for example. That is an easy meal that has protein, a lot of protein. It's easy to prepare. And if different people in the house like eggs, but like them prepared in a different way, it's not such a big deal to scramble one egg and to fry another. So everybody kind of gets to have their custom made dinner, but you're not making a bunch of different dinners for each person. So that reduces a lot of time. We've already talked about, like, it takes time away from your shopping, because you're not like, oh my God, what am I going to order? I don't know. Or what am I going to shop for when I get to the supermarket? So that's taken off the table. And Monday night is taken care of. Tuesday night, for example, and I'm giving you my menu that I did for years and then was able to make it more,
Oh my gosh, we
glamorous.
get the ins to
You
Alma's
get the ins,
secret
but this
kitchen.
is, it's important. So another example is, um, Tuesday night, my kids wouldn't eat, when they were younger, would not eat any different kind of cheese than mozzarella cheese. They only wanted white tortillas. They only wanted, again, broccoli was the only vegetable that they were willing to eat. So I always had tortillas in the house. I always had mozzarella cheese in the house. And again, I always had broccoli in the house. As you're listening to this, you might think, oh my God, as the parents or guardians or relatives who live in the house, I don't want to eat a boring, you know, quesadilla on Tuesday nights. So this is where it gets exciting, Iris. So brace yourself, hold on to your seat.
Okay.
This is an opportunity to not make a totally separate meal for yourself or yourselves, but to elaborate on what they're eating, to embellish it. So not only are you getting to eat something that's not a totally different thing, you are exposing your children to something that's similar to what they're eating that they feel safe eating, but you're exposing them through osmosis and just through it being on the same table to other foods that are more healthy, that are varied. So, for example, making quesadillas for your kids. If your kids will only eat white foods, which is very common with a lot of kids, especially kids with disabilities, a lot of white foods. So plain, white tortilla, flour tortillas, and mozzarella cheese. Not the healthiest, not the worst thing in the world, but not the healthiest. You, my friend Iris, will be adding vegetables, chopped up leftovers, that carrot you were talking about. Guess where that carrot's going? You're going to grate that carrot into your quesadilla. You are going to take the leftover chicken from 3 nights ago that you don't want going to waste. You're going to chop that up. You're going to put that in your quesadilla. And you're going to take that spinach that we were talking about that's very fragile and the cilantro. You are excuse me, you are going to take that and you are going to saute it up and you're going to put that in your quesadilla. So it's an awesome way to, one, use up leftovers, and number two, eat the way you want to eat, but not make a whole separate meal. And it's a way to show your children this is how adults eat. And let me assure you that eventually, and you're not pushing them, you're not forcing them to eat it, over time they're going to say, can I have some chicken in my quesadilla?
That's funny.
Oh, cilantro. I had that at my friend's house in guacamole and it was good. Can I have some of that in my, quesadilla? So all of these things that you're doing are going to become easier and you're just going to like sit there, and as the kids get older, I always tell my clients, how many, 55-year-olds do you know who only eat chicken nuggets for dinner? Like some do. And I feel very sorry for them because there's a lot of other good food out there. But most people, as they get older, and I hate to say it, but it comes from peer pressure. Their friends will start eating more things or more varied things, and they want to try it. They're going to want to go to sushi with their friends, or they're going to want to, eat in a restaurant with their friends eventually, or with their family members. And just by exposing them, they say you have to expose a kid like over 20 times to a food for them to feel safe and comfortable trying it. So all you're doing is eating something separate from them, and eventually they will want more varied foods.
Okay, so first of all, you put me at ease here because I have this, family who has the health craze, and for them, a healthy meal is brown rice that was soaked a day in advance, combined with azuki, with a garnish of wakame, seaweed, whatever it is. I cannot tolerate all of that. That's hours of preparation. You need to think of a meal like at least 24 hours in advance. I can do breakfast for dinner, and definitely I know how to make a quesadilla. So far, so good, Alma. I can handle that. And you even gave a permission here earlier in this conversation to actually buy the food to add to your menu for the beginners level, like myself. Buying food is my forte.
Good, good. And there's a lot of people say that they don't like to cook because they can't take the time to shop and it takes too long. We have all of these things now that are available to us. We have Instacart, we have delivery services that can be very inexpensive. You can shop at Costco or these places that have tons of food. And once you create your menu for your family, you can buy things in bulk that are much cheaper. So, for example,
okay, give the example, but I wanted to really ask you, for the benefit of everyone, if you can later finish your weekly menu, because that was super interesting.
Oh, okay, I will. But I'm giving away the cow here. All right.
Sorry. Okay, so don't.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's okay.
We just don't have that much time. I mean, how long are we here? I'm happy to do it, but
Alma, so I'll say this then, that everyone who's interested in learning more about the personality types that Alma created and the menu routine and how you can connect the menu to your shopping list and make your life easier, Alma has actually written a book, and it's not out there yet, but it will be soon, and
It
then
will be.
you can see and read all her secrets for yourself.
Yes, I am happy to share it here in this podcast. I was just joking, but we don't have that much time. But I do want to say that this is really doable. And people who never cooked before, and creating the menu is really the crux of the practical piece of this and the psychological, because we don't even realize what our obstacles are until we really start thinking about it and talking about it. It's very deep. You know, people are always baffled by what I do. They're like, I never heard of somebody who helps people with their psychological obstacles to cooking. And I will tell you that nobody does do that. As far as I know, I've been doing this now for 15 years. Nobody, I've never heard of anybody covering this, but it's a no-brainer. It's like, this is why a lot of people don't cook. And I'm not saying that people have deep psychological issues. We're just not aware of we don't know what we don't know. We don't even realize that, oh, that's why I hate cooking so much or I feel so inept. It's because I can't stand shopping because I get so confused. I don't know what to buy. I keep hearing about different positions on agave, that it's healthy, and then I hear it's not healthy, and it makes me so confused, and I don't even want to deal with it, and then I get stressed out about the shopping, so that's why I don't cook. People don't even realize what is keeping them from getting into the kitchen. So that's really what I think, and people can even do that on their own. They don't need me for that. But I sort of hold people's hand through this process, and I really, I'm a therapist, so I kind of can enter it from different angles. But the main thing I want to leave people with is that cooking is a learned skill. It is not something you're born with, because people, especially as they get older, have a lot of shame around not being able to do it. They're like, I'm not a good wife, I'm not a good mother, I'm not a good partner. What's wrong with me that I can't cook and that all these other people cook? It is a learned skill, and many of us were not brought up in homes where we were taught how to cook. And historically, if you weren't taught how to cook, you would die. So you had to learn how to cook. We don't have that incentive anymore in our society, at least in the United States, for the most part. We can order cheap food that's really bad for us and eat. We don't have to cook. So you have to really get in touch with, why do I want to cook? Like, what is my goal here? And that will make it easier to kind of get on board with the things that you have to do, because it is an investment in time and energy to learn how to cook. It's not magic. I'm not going to snap my fingers for you and have you know how to cook. You have to really say, I want to do this. It's not going to take forever to learn how, but I need to understand why I'm not cooking, what has not worked for me before when I've tried to learn how to cook. What's the negative baggage I'm bringing to the kitchen that's keeping me from cooking? And once we kind of tackle that, or you figure that out on your own, you're going to be more open. Your mind is going to be more open to take in information to learn how to cook. So it's deep. This is some deep stuff. Eating disorders can play a part in this. If you had an eating disorder as a kid, there are lots of things that have an impact on why you don't want to cook. But cooking is important, and it's important that we show our family, and especially our children, we need to model cooking behaviors so that they grow up and learn how to cook, and understand the value of cooking for people, to nurture them, but also for health reasons and to save money. So
Alma, so this brings
I'm
me
done
to
there.
another important question. I know
Mm-hmm.
that you've been giving workshops for adults and children with disabilities on how
Yes.
to cook, and teaching cooking to people that wouldn't
Yep.
normally come to learn how to cook. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what we as parents can do with our own children with
Yes.
disabilities, and how we can teach them to cook?
Yes. So it's really important that if we feel that we don't have the patience to do that, then to outsource and to get someone else to teach your kid how to cook. Seriously. And that's, a lot of people have come to me for that. But for yourself, it's really important to, number one, cook in front of your kids. That's number one, just so that they see that cooking, food does not come out of a box in the freezer, that you are actually preparing it. So cooking in front of your kids is huge. having your kids participate in some way, even if it means just ripping lettuce. And, I'm thinking about your daughter, Karen, who can't, move her hands. She can dictate to another person what to do. I have people, that I've worked with who tell somebody, I even did this. I once had a horrible back issue that just lasted for a few days, but I had to prepare a meal for somebody. I dictated to other people what to do. I told them, cut that lettuce, cut that. And you've mentioned numerous times in episodes, we both have, about how our kids need to feel a sense of control over something. So simply, so food is a huge thing, and people feel very vulnerable if somebody's feeding them something that they don't like or they don't want. So having a child who can't even prepare it physically, they can dictate to someone else, I want spinach in that quesadilla. I want you to cut up the tomato in this particular way, because texture and size of food can make a difference for when people are eating. So having your kid simply tell you how they want something prepared, is a form of cooking. It may not be sitting there holding the frying pan, but they can tell somebody how they want. I like my omelet steamed, not fried, because that tastes bad to me and it's hard for me to eat it and I don't like it. That kind of control is huge. So giving that control to a child is with a disability, for any, and these, what I'm saying really goes for a lot of people, whether they have a disability or not, but we do have the added, issues. So
I mean,
an
there's to
example,
ask, but how do you steam an omelet?
you can, if you've probably been to restaurants where it's fluffy and light, as opposed to like hard and fried. So you just, you can add some liquid and put a cover on it to, steam it a little bit more so it's light and fluffy, not cook it as long, not have the flame on really high. I'll teach you the next time I see you, Iris.
Okay.
But not have the flame on really high with oil, so that it's like frying it really, it's like deep, think about like something that's deep fried. It's going to be hard as opposed to light and fluffy and soft. Okay. And the key with eggs, I'll just give you a little tip, is low and slow. So you cook it a long time on an extremely low flame. So it's sort of like steaming it, like, it's not fried.
Interesting. Every day
Oh,
I
I
learn
have so
something
much
new.
to teach you, Iris. We
I
gotta get
know.
together again.
It's sad.
We gotta get together again. Um, but for kids also, so Iris mentioned, I teach adults who have autism and Down syndrome how to cook. I've been running a class for a number of years. Now, unfortunately, through COVID, I haven't been doing it, but um, some of the things that we focus on are, and that you can do with your kids, is writing things out with tremendous detail, especially if someone has ADHD or, for a lot of disabilities, we forget stuff. We all forget stuff. So if someone has trouble with sequencing, whereas it might be very easy for some people to deal with sequencing, for some people it can be really hard. So writing every single step out, even something that you think is the most obvious step, write it out. So for example, before you touch the meat, wash your hands. Wash your hands after you touch the chicken. Um, uh, Pick up the knife. Make sure that you're holding it from the end that is the handle, and keep your fingers, all the like regular cooking techniques, but spelling everything out and having ingredients in a similar place, and even labeling where spices are with a little sticky note on a cabinet. This is where the spices are. And if a child or an adult has a specific meal that they like, that calls for all, and that they like to make a lot, putting all the spices that go, you might have 100 spices in your cabinet, putting all the spices that go in that one dish. Let's say it's like cinnamon, cumin, pepper, cloves, and salt, for example. Keep all those, even though they are different in alphabetical order, you would put all those spices together in the same area, so that if that's a dish that they like to make, 3 times a week, they always know exactly where to find it. So just really thinking out of the box about what that particular person needs to be able to cook. And we all know our children best. We know how they learn best. And so we're the experts on what they might need. For my son, I don't let him, he has Prader-Willi syndrome. He wants to eat a lot of food. I let him tear the lettuce. So if he happens to sneak some, he's eating lettuce. And he's not chopping up chocolate, whereas if I turn my back, half the chocolate bar is in his mouth. So I know my kid best, so that's the kind of task I'm going to give him. So there's so much to learn, and and it can be really fun. I'm really passionate about cooking with the family because it's really important to me. Cooking for me really is something that it's a way that I show love and nurturing, and my kids they've associated dishes that I've made with certain holidays, and they're at a point now where they can help me make that, and it's something that brings the family together. And we've talked in other episodes about things that some of our kids really can't partake in. They can't take advantage of sports or playing a musical instrument, things that may bring us joy, or that we always thought, wow, I couldn't, I always imagined that I would do this with my kid, and it feels like, it's grief that I can't do this with my child. You can do it with cooking in a lot of different ways, and that's a way to do something together, do something with the siblings, do something with the parents. It's something that creates really nice memories, and it tastes good. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah, Alma, I am telling you, you're the American answer to the Japanese KonMari. While she's helping us organize our homes, you're going to fly to Japan now and teach them all how to cook and overcome their
I think they know.
Yes. I don't know. Their rates of like fast food eating and
because they're paying attention to the Westerners, it's a problem.
I know. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for sharing a little bit of your wisdom and how it can help us commoners that really don't spend so much time in the kitchen. And as always, it was a pleasure talking to you. And I want
it's
to
always a pleasure.
I had the real pleasure of eating Alma's food many, many times, because she, as you said, likes to cook and I like to eat. So it's been both an honor and a privilege to be an official taster sometimes.
I love that.
Thank you for today. Looking forward to
for asking
everyone. Yeah, everyone in our next episode. If you have any questions about menus, shopping lists, cooking, and how to handle all of that with your child with the disability or your family in general, please touch base with Alma and she'll be happy to answer, right?
Always happy to answer.
Okay. Thank you so much. See you next time.
All right. Bye. Take care. Bye.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can hear it. Thank you.